again, I think that's the other problem with some of these titles is because, they get the title and so it's like, oh, but they're a wizard. You're a
Mm,
wizard, Harry Potter. You're a magician.
yeah,
Archetype. Yeah, no, he's not. Like he's absolutely not a magician
yeah.
archetype. Releasing your inner dragon. So concerning this more academic topic of the 12 archetypes of characters, what does that even mean? Like what is this thing?
So I think that the first thing that one should discuss when you're talking at this very Jungian level, about this philosophical concept is what an archetype actually is. And basically, the principle of an archetype is that it is notably recurrent within the human experience. It is something that everybody can recognize as a person type or an emotion or an event that they recognize as echoing something in their lives. Okay? And archetypal characters, which is what we're discussing today, serve very well as a kind of grounded start to developing a character.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest concepts to grasp in writing is the Wizard of Oz effect. You know, we want the audience to see the big flaming head, but in reality, we're just a nerdy guy behind the curtain pulling cords. So we want it to feel real. We want it to feel like you could just walk into these worlds. But the reality is that we're writing drama. And to write drama, you have to be focused. You have to focus on certain things. You have to exaggerate certain things. You have to, push the envelope, turn it to 11, because you can't just be wishy-washy. And that is, I think, the downfall of, especially today, so many stories. Everybody is graying everything out. We've talked about that before, where it's like, oh, the heroes can't be heroic and the villains can't be villainous. Everybody has to just basically be both good and evil, and who knows who's right and who's wrong. And so you just take the drama out of, and stories that are that work really well, but that's not every story. And
Mm.
especially when you get into like our genres, which is the adventure fantasy, it's supposed to be over the top. It's supposed to be, the heroes are supposed to be heroic and the villains are supposed to be villainous. And I think that's what archetypes help a lot of people to realize, because they can go, oh, here's 12 things that psychiatrists have kind of picked for
Mm.
humanity of the way, as a psychiatrist, you could kind of put people into boxes, and we can then think about that for our characters.
So as the person who writes the more kind of morally gray, let me just say in defense of the morally gray that you can absolutely use archetypes on either side of the line. And we're gonna get into the actual archetypes and go through them. And I promise you, I will find an example for each archetype where they are on the quote unquote evil side rather than being on the good guy side. Because archetypes help you create intense characters and they help you create a base for a character. And it doesn't matter whether you are writing a binary narrative, good versus evil, or whether you're writing a morally gray political drama or whatever. If I think of what was it, House of Cards with Kevin
Spacey.
Spacey. There we go, Kevin Spacey. That was terribly morally gray, like the whole
Okay,
thing, but it was
was it?
filled with drama.
I think it was more morally black.
Yeah, okay, sure. But it was drama filled. It was excellent in its narrative.
Yeah, it was the no one sees themselves as villains, even
Yeah,
though they're pushing young girls in front of trains and murdering them.
exactly. But I'm not the villain. What do you mean
I
I'm the
had to
villain?
do that. It was for the better of my career.
I killed a dog in the first episode, but I'm a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, no one sees themselves as a villain.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Um, even though we have plenty of villains in the real world.
So let's talk about archetypal characters.
Well,
And okay.
actually, I want to take a side note,
Mm,
um, and kind of talk about this from a big picture kind of standpoint, because I don't think a lot of people go down these paths like I do with pushing back against this stuff, because it's a really weird thing. One, you should learn this stuff. I learned it. It helps you understand writing. It helps you the characters and everything like that. But the reality is, you can't. There is no checklist for writing a story. There is no formula. There is no. I mean, yes, there are some genres out there that are way more formulaic than are not, like romance or
mm,
mystery or whatever. We've got these very tight formulas that we will follow and
mm.
just pump out story after story after story after story. But not in what we do. Like, there's no, when you get into fantasy, when you get into even westerns and sci-fi and everything like that, one of the things that have always attracted me to this industry, and why I've had 300 careers that lasted 1 to 4 months, and then I would quit because I felt like I had mastered everything there was to master, and yet I've been doing this now professionally for 20 years and still feel like I'm barely scratching the surface, is because the reality of storytelling is, it is the ultimate exercise in chaos. Like, once you step into the story, there is no sameness. Like, even from scene to scene that I write in the same story, and I'm going through and trying to plow through the Genesis Saga rewrite and all of that, I've already written all of these scenes. I already know them, and yet getting into them is still this unknown, like, where's it going to go, and what do I need, and what tools from all these different, like the character archetypes or this, that, and the
Mm.
other thing. Which ones am I using now? And I'm not going to use the ones I used a second ago in this. Like, it's crazy. So learning this stuff is important, but you have to learn it in a way that you're putting it into a toolbox, that you're not
I think that
creating a
one of the Yeah, so I think that one of the key things that people need to realize, and I see this sometimes in the comments, so if you're one of those commenters on our videos, please bear this in mind. Every single thing that we mention, every tool that we bring up is a tool. It doesn't mean it's the right tool for every story. Okay? It doesn't mean that you should apply it in every story. These tools are there to basically to stock your writer's garage. They hang on your wall of your writer's garage or dangle from, little wires and you pull them down or whatever. And you use them to create the story you want to tell and to emphasize the message you want to give to your readers. And in that same way, archetypes will help you. Okay? Understanding archetypes will help you, but don't marry them. Don't make them I have to put in these archetypes. That's not how you use a tool. Okay? You use the tools to shape your stories. And learning about the tools will help you shape your story. So absolutely, listen to us, read about this stuff, go research it. All of that stuff's true. But treat it like a toolbox, not like a checklist.
and a toolbox in the literal sense of the word. Like, I have used a hammer to screw in a screw. I have used a chisel to, you know,
I'm not a
whatever.
huge Ayn Rand fan, but she does have one absolutely sterling quote. If the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Right.
Which really, I mean, I will give her that quote.
But there's just, just because you learn, oh, I have this tool and it's
Mm,
used this way. doesn't mean that you might not run into a scene where you're like, ooh, if I use this tool this way instead, like it could
Right.
work for this,
And
even
that's what,
though it's not the tool for the job.
yeah, and that's what we'll get into when we talk about some of the details here. We will talk about unusual
Yes.
application of the archetypes.
Yeah,
Okay, so are we ready to hit the archetypes
I think
themselves?
so.
All right. So starting at the top, and we're starting arbitrarily at the top with the lover. So the lover is basically the romantic lead who's guided by their heart. They're all about the passion, the conviction, the humanity, and their weaknesses is typically their naivete, they're irrational. A very, very good example of this is Romeo and Juliet, both of them, because frankly, those kids met each other and 2 days later were willing to die for each other. Like, that is off the charts. Right. And I mean, Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, Belle in Beauty and the Beast, where it's much better applied, and so on. So that's basically what the lover is. Have you seen it anywhere where it's applied in a off-kilter way?
So one of the things we skipped that I think we should also talk about is how to use these, or at least my way of thinking on how to use these. And, you know, I said this before we started this. I tend to, my primary characters are a mix of a lot. And then my secondary characters are a mix of not quite as much. And then when I get to my tertiary characters is when I start going, oh, you're not on screen for very long. So I'm going to just give you this archetype because I need to focus on this thing. So it's harder to pick some of these out as characters who are all this because of the fact that these are a lot of tertiary characters that are going to be these one singular pillars. So as an example, in Hannibal, the TV show, technically, even though Hannibal was a mentor character to our detective, I can't remember his name.
He was more of a sage, but yeah, sure.
Well, mentor sage,
Yeah.
I think that's the same.
Not strictly speaking, not quite.
Okay.
They're like
We'll get,
half an inch apart
okay.
sometimes.
I always see them as the same, just two different terms for the same thing, unless you're thinking about the magician. But anyway,
Yeah.
he was
But
also
yeah,
a
so
lover.
sage or mentor. That she's absolutely, yes, absolutely. She's
Yeah.
guided by. Yeah.
No, I mean in the TV show. So
Oh, in the TV show.
in the TV
Okay.
show.
Yeah.
So he's still obviously a mentor because he's
Mm.
teaching this guy the ways of serial killers, just like he does in Silence of the Lambs. But he's also a lover in like, I mean, it culminates with them embracing at the end in the final episode.
Yeah.
So there is a very weird love affair going on, and it's not a sexual love affair.
Yeah.
It's an intellectual love affair, but it still has the same attractions. It still has a lot of the things that Hannibal chooses to do is irrational. Isn't for teaching this guy about serial killers. It isn't for him killing him and being a serial killer. He literally puts himself in harm's way. He literally has things where he impacts his own plans because if he didn't, then
Will Graham.
Will, yes, then Will would have suffered or even died and been taken out of Hannibal's life. So he literally is doing a lot of the characteristics of the lover. But again,
Yeah.
he's more of a main character, so he's going to have a mix and an amalgam of them.
So so that is a great example of the lover included in an archetype, a mixed archetype. I think another interesting application of the lover is in Frozen, where Princess Anna is very much the lover, right? And what I find particularly fun about Frozen is they even set up that initial, that typical Disney romance of meet, fall in love, get married, happily ever after. That's been in like Disney films from time immemorial. And then her sister is like, no, under no circumstances are you marrying this dude. And it's a very interesting use of the lover because the lover part is actually thwarted by the story. the archetype is deviated from its normal course. Like the trope of the lover, the normal arc of the lover is completely subverted, which I found very interesting.
Yeah. But again, like I said, for me, if I'm going to be using an archetype for an, character, it's going to usually be a tertiary character. So we talked about this before we recorded as well. So, going through and doing the rewrite of Genesis, one of the main characters' wives is literally the lover archetype. And that's it. That's all she is. She's in 3 scenes. She's not even in them completely. She is in 3 scenes as a tertiary character in those scenes. And so I don't have a lot of screen time to flesh her character out. So I need to, again, focus and exaggerate. And so all of her decisions are based off of her love for her husband and family, how she reacts, like at the end, the third scene that she's in, another character has come back to basically tell her, your husband is dead, but I do have the thing to save your child. So while she's thankful that he brought back the thing to save her child, which is what her husband went out to get, she hates him because he also came back with her husband's power, which had to have been given to him by her husband, which means he sacrificed himself for this stranger to her. And so she hates him. And while that may be irrational to hate the person that is literally saving your child, it makes sense from a lover's archetype standpoint.
Yeah.
Because of her love for her husband.
Yeah.
But that's all I got. Sure I don't have a lot of time with that character.
I'm not sure if you want to leave that in because that contains a lot of spoilers for you.
It does.
There is a mention in the peanut gallery that Anne Rice's Lestat is a good example of a lover on the bad side of life, which is true. Lestat is very much a lover, as is actually his friend Louis. So yeah, and they're not what I would call, they're on the protagonist side, but I wouldn't call them the heroic side by any stretch of the imagination.
Right. Well, they're vampires.
Yeah. So that's the lover. Then the hero. The hero is the one I guess we're all familiar with. It's the protagonist who rises to meet the challenge and save the day. Going back to Achilles from the Iliad, Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, Wonder Woman in Wonder Woman, Harry Potter in Harry Potter, etc., etc., etc. The list is long. There isn't that much to say about the character, although you can subvert the trope. The hero can be working for the wrong side because they've been tricked, they've been fooled, they've been brainwashed, etc., etc. Which is an interesting subversion. I don't know if you want to say anything on the hero, really.
I mean, again, I don't think anyone does. To me, again, a good dynamic character is somebody, we're talking about protagonists, your main characters, your secondary characters. They're characters that have more than one trope. I can't think of any character that has reached pop culture status that is a single thing. I mean, I guess there are. So like, what's his name's character from Elf?
Skywalker is very hero, especially at the beginning. He grows into a role of like magician-y, but he starts very hero, which is also an interesting way to use the archetypes is as a growth path.
Yeah.
To be like, I'm going to grow from archetype hero into archetype magician.
Right. But I was going to say, what's his name's character from Elf is definitely an innocent archetype from start to finish. That's also a very specialty.
Yeah. Mice and Men, which we'll get to, is very much, Lenny is very much the innocent. Like you can't argue that he's the innocent.
Right.
He's still, but we'll get to Lenny because it's complicated. Yeah. But he is the archetype of the innocent.
Yeah. So yeah, I think more dynamic characters are going to have, the ones that are actually going to impact the reader are going to have a mix of a couple of these things, which makes them, because if they're just the character that just stands up and always does the right thing.
So Starum Brightblade, who massively impacted me, Rip Starum, was pretty much the hero. start to end.
Yes, I can
But
see that.
but his heroism shone so brightly because he was the only one.
Right.
He was the only one who was that honorable, that courageous, who plotted a path that didn't sacrifice his honor and didn't compromise his values and still achieved, kind of kept true to those vows despite everything. I mean, ultimately it ended in his death, which is probably where everybody who, believes that deeply in honor ends up. That it seems to be the recurring theme. But he massively impacted the story and the reader with his death.
Yeah. I mean, if you go and don't include all the current incarnations that, and I say current over the last 50 years, Superman would be that, but we're talking
Yeah,
the original versions of Superman and not once they started trying to actually humanize him and make him more dynamic.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah. But I think the hero is the one that everybody knows the best, and it's kind of been done to death. So let's canter along to the magician, who is basically somebody who harnesses the ways of the universe to achieve key goals. So this is like Prospero from The Tempest, or Gandalf, or Morpheus from The Matrix, or Darth Vader from Star Wars.
The Great Gatsby.
Great Gatsby from
He was
yeah.
the magician's magician without, we're talking about its strategic ability, knowledge, experience. Their weaknesses are always hubris
Mm,
or, full of themselves, whatever. And like that is a character that is a single archetype.
yeah.
But he was also, when you read The Great Gatsby, he is the almost the word I'm looking for, where you're so into something that you become a stalker, because that's really what Nick Carraway
Obsessive.
was. Yeah, he was. Well, yeah, he was the obsessive focus of Nick Carraway. So when we get this information from Nick as the narrating character, are we getting his take of The Great Gatsby, or that's completely clouded by his complete obsessiveness and the fact that he is 100% enamored and wanting to be this person? Or was he actually that way? Was The Great Gatsby actually like he is portrayed in Nick's story? So I always thought that was fascinating. And that's just my love for unreliable narrators, where
Mm,
they tell factual stuff. We were talking last night in group. There's this one guy reading this thing, and it just, every time he reads it, it reminds me of The Voices. It's a movie with Ryan Reynolds where it starts off and you're in this kind of magical world that's overlaid on our world, and it's all just factual. It's just the way it is. And then as the movie goes on, some cracks start appearing for you, and there's some incongruities that you're like, wait a minute, why aren't the facts of my world lining up with what this is going on? And eventually you find out that the main character is literally just insane. And so the world that you're introduced to is his world, and this is what he sees, and this is how he interacts with it.
mm,
But as it goes on, his insanity is so great because he's just in the real world. He's just in a mundane world. There's nothing magical about the world he's in. And so these fantasies, these illusions that you saw as factual start coming up against reality.
yeah.
And so it's just that it was brilliantly done. I really love that movie. It's so underrated for one of his early movies, but it's a great piece of an unreliable narrator, because the beauty of an unreliable narrator is that they're presenting this information as factual to the audience. Like, this is reality. You're not lying to them, because as the character, as these things start breaking down, the reader and the character are learning at the same time that the lie exists. So it's
Mm,
not like the character's just flat out lying, like that one Agatha Christie book where at the end of it you find out that the narrator is the murderer, and
yeah.
you've been traveling, and it's like, you're an this. You just lied to me. There's no, like, you knew you murdered these people.
This was
And you were
never a
hiding it
twist.
from me. Right. You were just hiding it from me.
Yeah.
And so that's the one Agatha Christie book that I hate. But yeah, it was brilliantly done. And if you haven't seen The Voices and you don't mind, it is a very crazy psycho serial killer movie. So just be
Mm.
aware it's definitely dark, but it's a comedy. It is very
Yeah.
funny
Yeah.
in a kill your neighbors kind of way.
In a dark humor kind of way. I gotcha. All right. So, yeah, the magician's an interesting figure, generally speaking, and you can just see from the examples, it goes all over the place from Gandalf through Morpheus, all the way to Darth Vader, running kind of the gamut of being on the good side or the bad side.
Yeah, I will, and I know that's what they have in here in their master class on it. I disagree with Gandalf. I do not think that he
Really?
is the magician archetype at all in any way, shape, or form,
Okay.
other than the
Maybe.
fact that he's a wizard. Well, I mean, what is he doing that drives this? His sole purpose is there to be the more of a mentor character than anything else, I think, to the whole.
So, I hear you. How do you feel about replacing Gandalf with Saruman?
Yeah, yeah, I would see Saruman more as the magician archetype, where, you know, their strategic ability to shape the story and just their ability to do it in a magical, I mean, because that's what it means. It's not, the magician isn't about using magic, it's about doing things in the story that seem magical. It's just so
Yeah.
effortless. They're not even trying. It just happened. That's why I love The Great Gatsby, and it's not
Mm.
included on the masterclass list. I think The Great Gatsby is the ultimate magician character, because he effortlessly shapes the world around him in this magical way. Everyone wants to do
To
his
help
bidding.
them. Yeah.
And I see that is more of the magician archetype, just somebody who can just effortlessly make things
Mm.
happen. And again, it's got the word magic in it, so I can see why, you throw Gandalf in there. And then the same thing on there, they use, I disagree with Morpheus. I also disagree with Darth Vader. I just don't feel like either of those two are magician archetypes. Morpheus is 100% the mentor, the sage, whatever you want to say. Like, he's literally there to teach.
He's certainly there to teach, I agree, but I wouldn't say that he's got none of the magician in. Because
But
he has,
what does he do to wrap the story around himself and in a direction that he wants? He's constantly struggling against not being right. He does believe that Neo is the one, but that's not what the magician archetype is. And so I don't know. Like I said, I disagree with the masterclass article on that.
so in the Star Wars universe, I'd say the Emperor more than Darth Vader as the magician.
Yeah, because he stands up there and gives a speech and the entire universe bows
Yeah.
to his feet.
I think they mean the original movie, not the not the trilogy. But yes, he certainly mastered the art of plot convenience in the trilogy, did
Right.
the Emperor.
Right. So I don't
Which
know.
is
Like I
the
said,
ultimate power for any magician is to master plot convenience.
yeah. I mean, that is the magic of what they have. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't see them. I'm not saying that they don't have an aspect of the magician,
Yeah.
but that's, if we're looking for actual representations of the, trope,
Magician.
the
Yeah.
trope, I just don't see them.
Yeah, so I agree. I think Saruman would have been a better example,
Yeah.
as these
Again, I
things.
think that's the other problem with some of these titles, is because, they get the title, and so it's like, oh, but they're a wizard. You're a
Mm,
wizard, Harry Potter. You're a magician
yeah.
archetype. Yeah, no, he's not. Like, he's absolutely not a magician
Yeah.
archetype.
So our fourth one is the outlaw, the rebel who won't abide by society standards, who's independently thinking, and their weaknesses, of course, is that they tend to sometimes be a little self-involved and potentially criminal. And here they actually do have a really good example with Han Solo from Star Wars. He
is the perfect example for the
Yeah.
archetype of the outlaw. It literally is his entire character. His entire motivation is defined by it. His
Yeah.
actions are created by it. Like, you don't get much more on the nose
No.
than Han Solo.
In the same way that Luke Skywalker 100% is the hero, in that first movie, Han Solo is 100% the outlaw. Like, there's no.
Now, I do have another hardcore gripe on the masterclass list because they have Batman listed on there. And
Okay. You
while
don't
he
think
is
he's outlaw?
breaking the law to go after these criminals, he is not self-involved and, morally gray, because that's really what the outlaw. I mean, you look at Han Solo, he's in it for himself. Like, yeah, he ends up doing a nice thing, here and there, but he's really in it for himself. And that's that archetype, what it really embodies. Batman is never in it for himself. He literally will die and lose everything if it means saving innocence. He is 100% not an outlaw, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because I don't see him doing anything that's selfish.
I don't know. I don't see him as selfish, but certainly the willingness to break the law.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what the outlaw is.
No, I understand that. But the willingness to break the law, to kind of like shatter society, because Batman, he thinks he knows better. Like, he judges his own morality to be higher than society's laws. And that, like I understand that's not the way you're supposed to look at Batman. And mostly when I'm consuming Batman, that's not the way I look at it. When I'm consuming Batman, I set aside my complex thoughts on morality and society versus the individual, and I just watch Batman beating up bad guys, and I live in the moment, and it's fun.
Yeah, but if we go
But if
strictly
you
by the
really want to plunge into like the philosophy of vigilantism and the damage that it does in society, it perpetuates the problem. So he actually isn't solving it.
right. Yeah, and that's that. Whatever. I mean, he's obviously, if we're looking at tropes, he's the anti-hero.
Yeah.
The one that's willing to do. He's not all the way on that spectrum like the Punisher. But I mean, if we just look at the master class list and we look at their own definitions, he is 100% the hero. Because by their definition, the strengths are courage, perseverance, and honor, and their weaknesses are overconfidence and hubris. Like,
yeah,
that just fits Batman, and you can't put Han Solo in that. You cannot put Han Solo in that category, but you can, using their definitions of it, 100% put him into the, he's independent thinking, he has virtues, he owes no favors to anyone, he's self-involved, potentially a criminal. I mean,
I think that this discussion is actually like one of the key components that you should take away from this is this stuff, like everything else, is super subjective. Because I could put Batman in the outlaw category and feel righteous about it, but Drake wouldn't.
Well, I'm just using different definitions.
Yeah, and that's 100% fine. You can have these subjective disagreements. You can say, like, try to convince each other, agree to disagree, whatever. It doesn't, like, it's not a big deal. It is the impact the character has on you, the reader.
Right.
What this tool helps the author with is writing the character in a way that matches into these archetypes.
Yeah. So when you figure out, and this is what I was saying earlier. So like for your primary character, if you go, okay, these are the traits that I want my character to have. So on this 12 Carl Jungian scale, I want him to be heroic. So here's the traits that a heroic person has. I want them to kind of slip into the outlaw as well, and maybe even have a little bit of this or a little bit of that. What that does is that gives you this foundation so that you can use those as your moral compass when you put the character in a situation and he or she is going to do something or say something or react in a certain way. Instead of you going, how would I do this? That's what so many new writers do. That's why when you read a book, every character feels like they're the exact same character because they're all making the same decisions. They're all kind of doing the same thing. There's no conflict between anything. You can look at what you've chosen as their kind of archetype tropes and go, So like what I was saying with that character's wife, all of her decisions are made based off of her love for her husband, period. Whatever situation, now she's only in 3 situations during the scene, but each one of them. So in the first one, he really is suffering with, he just got magically healed. And a part of that in this world is you have to have food. And so like he is suffering because his body is, he's as hungry as you can, like on the verge of starvation is what it feels like. But she's like, but I want attention from you. I want us to have adult time. Now, of course, he's a man and he does want the adult time. But that's why she makes the decision, because she wants that from him. And then, every decision she makes, since I've given her just the one archetype, I can now, every time I'm running her in a scene, I can go, okay, but how would this archetype react to this situation? How would they be feeling? What would they, do in their action? So it's not me making any decisions. It's the character making those decisions. Yeah. And then as I get in my secondary characters, they have more of them. As I get in my primary character, they have more of them. So it does give me a more dynamic way of running that character, but still it gives me the ability to use these things as tools to dictate how that character is going to react to these situations and not me.
Yeah.
And that's why all my characters feel different. Even my secondary and tertiary characters feel different because each one of them have their own base that I draw upon to make decisions for them when they're in a scene. And that's why this is so subjective. That's why we can go, well, but it's not really this, and it's not really that, but it could be this, and it could also be that, because that's the point of it.
Yeah. All right, the next one, number 5, is the Explorer, a character naturally driven to push the boundaries of the status quo and explore the unknown. It's curious, driven, motivated by self-improvement. Weaknesses are restless, unreliable, never satisfied. Archetype examples, they include Odysseus from the Odyssey. I don't know Saul Paradise on the Road. I do know Huckleberry Finn from The Adventures of Huck Finn. I'm not 100% sure about Sherlock Holmes, which they also include here. I wouldn't put Sherlock Holmes as an explorer.
And I just wouldn't use The Road as an example for anything. It's so bad. It's so bad.
I'm glad I've never read it.
Oh. Anyway.
But yeah, so I think Huck Finn is a fairly good example of the explorer.
Yeah, but again, like one of the things, and here's the problem. So, for this discussion, I pulled up 2 different lists. So we've got this masterclass list that we're kind of going through and using as our base, but I've got another list from a different something, and it doesn't even have the same things on it. Yes. Like the Explorer's not even on this one, but so the Explorer on this one is one of those things where I'm like, it's not really an archetype, in my opinion. It just isn't. There's no human being out there that is just for exploration and nothing else. And so I can't, if you can't show me a carving of humanity that would just fit into this one thing and that would define them in every single way, I don't feel it's a good example of a character archetype. As an example, in this other list, they have the orphan. Being an orphan doesn't make you anything. It doesn't Like you could literally be a,
Everyone
whatever.
eventually is an orphan most of the time. Okay, so, but yeah, so the explorer is basically a character who pushes the boundaries. The sage is a wise figure with knowledge for those who inquire. So this is also the mentor figure, or often the mother figure is based on this archetype. And the strengths are wisdom, experience, and insight. The weaknesses is, they say, cautious, hesitant to actually join the action. Famous sages, Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars, Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs, which is obviously a very dark version of this, and the Oracle from The Matrix, which I think is actually a pretty good example of that. As a single, she's a very good, the Oracle is actually a very good example of what you were calling that tertiary character that's a single thing.
Yeah.
The Oracle is just a sage. She's
Yeah.
nothing else.
Yeah. And look, when she appears in later movies, she
Yeah.
still is just doing the thing.
Yeah.
Her decisions are all driven by this thing.
Yeah. Then the innocent is a very interesting character where I want to spend a little bit of time. So this is a morally pure character, often a child whose only intentions are good. And their strengths are morality, kindness, sincerity. Their weaknesses are vulnerability, naivete, rarely skilled. Okay, so innocent archetype examples, of course, you have things like Buddy the Elf and Tiny Tim and so on. But the one that I want to linger on is Lenny from Mice and Men, because Mice and Men to me is an example of every archetype can be used on the dark side of the story. Because you could, like Lenny 100% was an innocent. He was an innocent archetype and he didn't know what he was doing. And I mean, I get that,
He has the
right?
mind of a child.
Diminished capacity and all of that. But he did murder a woman. Like he did do that thing.
So he killed a woman.
Yeah.
Murder implies intent.
Well, okay, murder is the legal definition. So he killed a woman. But
Right.
he definitely killed a woman.
Yeah, he took a life.
He took
He
a life.
100% took a life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the story's about.
Yes. Well, the story is also about his friend whose name escapes me right now, making the decision to kill him to save him from the lynch mob, which like is also its own interesting decision. Mice and Men, man, feel good book of the century.
Life is crap, and at the end of it, you got to kill your friend to save him from being torn apart by a angry mob. That's the bedtime story, kids. Now go to sleep and have pleasant dreams.
Great American classics. And they say you're a happy people. um, but Lenny is a great example of an innocent, as I say, who is on the wrong side of this, where his very innocence leads him to kill.
Yeah, he doesn't know his own strength. He's got the mind of a child. He's got a brain of probably a 5 or 6-year-old. And he's huge. He's a gigantic man. And so that causes issues.
Yeah.
But the story's not about him. The story is about his friend, that I also can't think of his name for some reason.
Cannot recall his name right this second.
No.
I want to say Jay or Jewel or something like that, but that's just me, I think, reaching. I can't remember it for love or money. One of the Peanut Gallery commented that it was set in the Great Depression of the 1930s, and yes, 100%
George. I don't know why I didn't remember that. Oh, I should have remembered that.
George.
Because that's literally, so before we were recording, my favorite comedy troupe is a group called The Vacant Lot. They only did 6 episodes and they were canceled because they were too funny. And they do a riff on this. And it does start out that way. Like the opening lines of that skit is, I killed him, George. I killed him. I killed Mickey Mouse. I killed him dead. And Lenny is like, George is like, no, Lenny, you killed a guy in a Mickey Mouse costume. No, it was Mickey Mouse, and I killed him, George. I killed him dead. And then Bugs Bunny has the spoof on it with the same big dopey dog that has the friend that's George. Can't believe I didn't remember that. So that's been spoofed a couple times with George.
Yeah. Poor old George.
Yeah.
Anyway, like so that's the innocent. The next one is the creator, who is a motivated visionary who creates art or structures during the narrative. So that's like strengths is creativity, willpower, conviction. Weaknesses is self-involvement, single-mindedness, lack of practical skills. The list they've got here is Zeus from the Iliad, which, sure.
Zeus.
Dr. Victor Frankenstein, which is a really good example, actually.
So actually, I think, and I just watched it recently,
Mm,
but the main villain from Tomorrowland, it it lost a ton of money because they advertised and marketed it wrong, but it's
yeah.
actually a good movie. And the villain in that is 100% a creator,
Okay.
especially when you get down to like the lack of practical skills, because he was a
Mm,
bureaucrat,
mm,
but he was this visionary of building this whole
mm.
thing. And so, yeah, 100%, that would be a great example. If you saw Tomorrowland, then the main villain, I don't know if he was an alien or not. It never really quite defined that. But he was either an alien from another world or a human from another dimension or whatever. But he was 100% a creator. And he, was the in charge of Tomorrowland.
Okay,
So that'd be a great example of that.
cool. Then we have the ruler, a character with legal or emotional power over others. Their strength is omnipotence, status, resources. Weaknesses is aloofness, disliked by others, out of touch. Examples is Creon from Oedipus Rex, King Lear from King Lear. King Lear, of course, was also famously very mad.
Mhm.
Like, mad as a March hare. Aunt Sally from The Adventures of Huck Finn, and Tony Soprano from The Sopranos. Which is an interesting choice. If I were to hit Shakespeare's plays for an example of the ruler, I would probably go to like Much Ado About Nothing, and the Duke, I can't remember what his actual name is, but the Duke that, the chick falls in love with when she's playing her brother, and uh, that
It's
whole
been
thing.
too long. Been too long. It's not one of the ones that I have watched over and over again.
So I enjoy Much Ado About Nothing, and it's been remade a few times in various like formats. So there's one where it's like a high school drama, set in like an American school system kind of thing, and one where it's kind of modern day thing and so on. So the Much Ado About Nothing is high on my list of
I'll
fun
throw one from
Shakespeare
my
plays.
world.
Hmm?
I'll throw one from my world.
Hmm.
Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns from The Simpsons is
Sure,
your very stereotypical ruler character. Very
100%.
aloof, very omnipotent, very much in power, disliked by others. Like he's a very singular archetype
Mm.
character.
Uh, One of the peanut gallery says Jack in Lord of the Flies, but I don't think so. Because the thing about the characters in Lord of the Flies is they're a little bit odd.
They're
Because
allegories.
yeah,
They're not characters.
yeah, they're allegorical.
Yeah, so
Um,
it's going to be hard to fit them into a human
Archetype.
category. Not that he doesn't have traits of the ruler,
Yeah,
100%, because he does take charge of the boys and all of that.
yeah.
But he is an allegory for all humans are born evil, and that's what, again, we're talking about what we're really trying to focus on here and trying to get across to you people, and maybe we're just meandering around too much. But remember, it's about the tool that we're going to use to help the characters make decisions that are going to be consistent with the character and drive the story.
Yeah.
So in Lord of the Rings, Jack and Ralph are allegories. So
Lord of the
Jack,
Flies. Lord
I'm
of the
sorry, Lord
Flies.
of the Flies.
Not
Sorry,
not Rings.
sorry. Hey, they both start with Lord.
Tolkien probably hated Lord of the Flies.
Maybe. So Jack is an allegory for all humans are born evil. So therefore,
Yeah.
every decision Jack makes is going to be made based off of that allegory. He can never change, he can never grow, he can never adjust, he can never learn because he's not a human, he's an allegory. And same thing with Ralph. Ralph can't change or grow either, which is why he doesn't during that story. He is a allegory for all humans are born good. So every decision he makes and every, thing that he does in every scene has to be driven by that. Because if you lose that, you muddy the waters of the story. Because remember, we can never mention this stuff to the audience. And so the only way we can really get the audience to consume this stuff is through consistency. And that's why these archetypes are so important to understand, is because it allows you, because even like your main characters who you want to be more dynamic, you still don't want them to be all 12 aspects of humanity.
Yes.
If according to Carl Jung, you want to focus in on some things so that they are interesting and dynamic, but they are still beating a drum. They're still doing this thing that every time they're on screen, this is the message that the audience is supposed to be subliminally or, subconsciously consuming.
There's a rhythm and a pattern to their actions that, yeah. All right. So our next one is number 10, the caregiver, which is
Actually,
honorable, selfless, loyal. Their weaknesses is lacking personal ambition or leadership.
let's take a step back.
Yeah.
I think this does really put the nail in what we started this with. This is a great example of we're using, like in Lord of the Flies, we're not using these archetypes to write that story. They are tools that we're choosing not to use, and instead we're using allegories as our tool to create the story. So again, it's about learning all of these different aspects of storytelling and story structure, and then understanding the story that you're trying to communicate to the audience and picking the tools that are going to best enhance that. Now, the funny thing is, if we look at Piggy, and I'm just doing this on the fly, so he would probably be the innocent.
Yeah.
Like he would be the innocent archetype. So we have aspects of these 12 character archetypes in Lord of the Rings, and that is helping generate some of the Lord of the Flies. It's a ring of flies. It's Lord of the Ring of the Flies. That's what it is in my mind. But this is a great.
So it's interesting because Piggy actually represents, in Lord of the Flies, Piggy represents humanity. He represents all of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is why we kill him.
Yeah, which is why the boys kill him. Which one could then go into a very extended psychoanalysis of like why humanity is represented as innocent and yet is killed by
they're all born evil.
The dark forces. It's a very interesting contradiction.
Golding was an interesting contradiction of a man anyway.
Yeah. One could spend a lot of time on Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, but that's just a great example of where we started with this, that it's not about finding a checklist. It's not about finding, I'm going to pick on somebody in the peanut gallery. It's not about creating an Excel spreadsheet and thinking everything is going to fit into that, because that's not how this works from my experience. From my experience, I said before we recorded, the thing that I love about writing a scene is it's like lassoing a tornado and then trying to ride it. You have no idea which direction it's going to go. You don't know what's going to come out of it. You don't know if it's going to rip you limb from limb. You don't know if it's going to drop you in Oz. You have no idea. And every scene I write feels that way. And so it doesn't matter what day of the week I sit down and what story I'm working on. I'm totally enthralled because of the fact that even though I've got all this knowledge behind me and 30 years of studying this, those are just tools that are hanging on the wall that I may or may not use at any given time, because I'm literally throwing a lasso around a tornado and then trying to figure out where it's going to take me through this 100%. Moment. And so I don't know. I love that aspect of this. All right. Sorry. I just thought that was a great example of tools when they work and tools when they don't work.
So we spoke about caregiver loss.
Yeah, we started on the caregiver.
I don't actually agree with any of their examples. Except maybe Sam Tarley, but even Sam Tarley I wouldn't say is the caregiver really. I would say that Sam Tarley is more kind of like an innocent
Yeah.
than
I
a
wasn't dropping no
caregiver.
E's. I promise.
Yeah, you know.
And how is
Um,
Mary Poppins the caregiver? She is
yeah,
way.
no, I was looking at that Mary Poppins example going, not in a million years is Mary
Yeah.
Poppins the caregiver, my man.
Yeah. She's more of the magician.
Yeah, she's definitely the world conforms to Mary Poppins's view. Like there's no way you're putting her into caregiver. So I definitely don't agree with her list. And I can't remember To Kill a Mockingbird well enough to say where the Kalpurina was.
The funny
Um,
thing is, this other list has both Samwise and Mary Poppins as a list, but they do have one that I do agree with, and that's Dustin from Stranger Things, the more plump of the boys.
that's a good point.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Yeah,
he
I
definitely
could go with
falls into
Dustin. Yeah.
that protective
Dustin from
quality.
Stranger Things would be a good example for me
Yeah,
of the caregiver.
because he is trying to protect the group way more than, I mean, they're all trying to help each other out and survive and all of that, but he's kind of that nurturing,
Yeah,
the
the
more of the
nurturing type.
nurturing of the group than any
Yeah,
of the others.
yeah. Okay, so then the next one is the everyman, which, you know, the relatable character, the salt of the earth. Their weaknesses being they lack special power, they're often unprepared for what's going on. Bilbo Baggins, the obvious go-to example.
Again, I don't, this is another one of those, I just don't see this as an archetype.
Okay.
How can the everyman be an archetype? Every single human,
That's not what everyman means in this
I
context.
know, but it's just, that's where a lot of the characters in fantasy and sci-fi start,
Mm,
or that's where, not
right.
even,
But
actually not even where they start.
they start as every man and grow into heroes, which again goes back to that thing where I said you can also use archetypes to plot your growth on.
But,
I'm going to start as an everyman. I'm going to grow into being a hero.
and maybe I'm just prejudiced off of how much I use the hero's journey and how much I've
Mm,
studied the hero's journey and everything like that. Because the everyman is not an archetype to me. It is the, what are the things that you're trying to give to this character to make the reader go, wow, I'm just like this person.
mm,
So they're more traits
yeah,
that we all have. You know, we all care about our family, or we all want to succeed in our careers, or we all would save a little kitten, you know, that was a, that was, you know, a poor helpless thing in a bad situation or whatever. So it might be that I'm just prejudiced on that term,
mm,
but I really don't like, I don't see that as a, and it's not even on the other list. But again, the two lists are very different, even though they both have 12. I don't see that as a character archetype. It
yeah,
just, because Bilbo Baggins, while he start, you know, while he has everyman moments, the college kid just wants to party, hang with his friends. He is 100% the hero character. He's the one that's just going to do the right thing.
so no, Bilbo to me is not like Frodo could be seen
Oh,
in
I'm
a
sorry.
heroic.
I'm sorry. You're right. I said college kid. I was
Yes,
thinking Frodo,
yeah.
literally thinking Frodo.
Bilbo is very much dragged into the
Yeah.
adventure sideways.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah. I was thinking
it's
the wrong character. Sorry.
yeah, Bilbo is not Bilbo grows into heroism, but he does not start anywhere close to
No,
heroism.
and he doesn't even really grow into it because he
Yeah.
even, like, even when he has to go into the mount to face
Mm,
the dragon, he doesn't want to do that.
yeah.
And he tries to get away with not doing. The only reason why he does it, he's got this magic ring. Like,
Yeah.
that's the only reason why he does it. He never actually wants to do anything. So that's a
Yeah.
great. So here's a great exercise. What would Bilbo be? Because he wouldn't be the everyman. Of these archetypes, he's not a caregiver, he's not a ruler, he's not a creator, he's not really an innocent. Although he might be, I would put him, if I hadn't to choose, I'd put him more in an innocent than in a
So what's
everyman.
on your list? Like the other list?
They don't have it. They don't have the everyman.
Okay, what did they have in like number 11?
Oh, they're out of order. They have
Oh,
the
okay.
innocent, the orphan, which I don't think is a type, the hero, the caregiver, maybe the seducer, because that's not on this list. So they have the seducer that's not on this list. And yeah, that's it. So they have the two that they have that are not on this list are the orphan, and the seducer.
Hmm.
And on this list, it would be the everyman. And then,
The jester is on, or do they have the jester that
yeah, they
side
have
of them?
they call it the Joker, but it's the same. Just like they
Okay.
call it the mentor here, and you call it the sage
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
it's the same. What is the
The
other?
explorer.
Yeah, they don't have the explorer. And I'm trying to look at all the words to see if there's a
Yeah.
different word for it. Because again, they're using different words for some of these things. Yeah, so they do not have the explorer. And again, that's one that I disagree with, that I don't think is a, and that might be this person, whoever wrote this, was like, I don't think these two things are real. I'm going to put two other things on here. Although one of the choices was the orphan, which I don't think is a character archetype.
But either way, the thing is, like, I would agree with their description here of Bilbo Baggins. He is grounded, he is salt of the earth, he is relatable, he does lack special powers, and he is definitely unprepared for what's to come.
100%.
That is Bilbo Baggins.
It
Like, he
is.
gets
Yeah.
dragged through the adventure.
By their definition of
Yeah.
what the everyman is, he 100% fits with this. So does Winston Smith from 1984.
Yeah.
100% fits with this definition of what is an everyman character.
Mm.
Been too long
Remember,
since I saw Parks.
words matter in their context. In the hero's journey, the everyman is
Is a thing you do to connect the reader to the character.
yes, is a series of traits you'd used. But in this context, in the character context, it could be this kind of character, this kind of salt of the earth character.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I can see that if this is the definition. Again, like I said,
Yeah.
my big pushback on the Everyman was my prejudice for how much I lean on the hero's journey.
Mm.
So if they call, instead of the Everyman, if we call this average dude, this guy,
Yeah,
from another Ryan Reynolds movie. I'm not in love with him, I promise. He's just awesome and gorgeous and talented and funny, great in every way. But anyway, Guy from Free Guy.
mm.
He's your average, he has no real special powers. He has no, he just happens to notice that he's in a video game.
Yeah.
And same thing with the Lego movie.
Yeah.
And actually the same thing with Bink from Spell for Chameleon Zant series. It's either Blink or Bink is the character's name. It's
been way
20 years since I read it. But I mean, that's the thing. He goes on a quest because, so in that story, if you haven't read it, it's Florida, but it's a magical land. And if you don't have them, every single thing in there has a magical ability. And if you don't, they kick you out. They kick you into Mundania, which is Georgia and Alabama, because it literally is just the map of the United States. So you get kicked out of the magical land of Florida into Georgia and Alabama.
Florida man would be interested in that definition.
Yeah. So he goes on a quest to find out what his magic power is because he doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Like that. So you can't get more of an average Joe.
Yeah.
That. So it definitely, and then I admitted that in the beginning. It's probably just the title that is really throwing me off.
Yeah. Peanut Gallery says Thelma from Thelma and Louise. Yes, she was in no way prepared for what Louise was going to take her through.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody could have been prepared for what Louise was going to take them through. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Number 12 is the Jester or the Joker, a funny character, a trickster who provides comic relief but may also speak important truths.
Yes.
Funny, disarming, insightful, can be obnoxious and superficial. Archetype examples. They do like Shakespeare. Sir John Falstaff from Henry V, or King Lear's Fool from King Lear. R2-D2 and C-3PO from Star Wars.
I do not see. Yeah, in certain ways, I could put R2 and C-3PO in there. The best written gesture character of all times, though, is 100% Pont from Snurfs, A Magical Magical Fairy Tale. Available at Starving Rider Studio. But 100% the absolute best written gesture character in the history of literature. All 12 people who have read that agree.
Fair enough.
It's a movie script, but she is awesome and she is hilarious. And she says truth.
Yeah.
That's That's the whole thing. It's not just the comic relief character, because it has to be a character that brings substance to the story. So yes, they are funny. Yes, they bring that levity to the story, but without them, the story is missing something important.
Yeah.
So it's not just some buffoon character.
Yeah.
And they are very important when you use them. I mean, I don't write many gesture type characters because a lot of my stuff is very serious and dark and tragic. Nurse and Magic Fairy Tale is a kids movie, so it not quite as dark, but yeah.
So
I mean, do you have
think
any gesture characters that you would think of in
Sangwheel.
Sangwheel? Because I can't think of any.
No, I don't. Like, I have thoughts of including somebody who's got part of a jester in the next series, but in this series, I don't have any jesters per se. The Peanut Gallery says Doc Holliday from Tombstone, which to an extent, yes, you could, but it's elements of, not fully.
Yeah. Because he is definitely more the outlaw. If he was going to be put by the definition of this masterclass list, I would put him more in that Han Solo kind of role in that, because he was definitely in it for himself.
Yeah.
He's in it for his own glory and all of that. He really could have chosen either side.
Yeah.
He could have chosen the side of law or the side of the outlaws. And for whatever reason, he chose, the Wesley Tim twins
from Harry Potter, also in the Peanut Gallery, is a great example. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. And I should say, it's be a good time since we're talking about the Peanut Gallery. If you want to watch us record this live, you absolutely can. Eventually, we might do this live on YouTube. We haven't decided. We don't have a huge technical crew, so we're just doing all this stuff on our own. However, if you go to the writer's room, and it's writersroom.us, you can join for free. And one of the free area activities that you can do is you can join us every Thursday morning Pacific time. So for you, it's Thursday evening, and you can actually watch us record this live, and you can be a part of the conversation and help us mold these. So writersroom.us, link down below, and you can just join the free section. If you do join the paid section, you can get critiqued by me and Marie, and you get writers classes and workshops and all sorts of things. But you should join the free side no matter what. If you're listening to this podcast, you should be a member of the Writers Room on the free side, because there's still plenty of things that you get value-wise out of that.
So we had ambitions for reading a piece and discussing it, but I think we are at time.
We're actually over. Yeah, we're at an hour and 15.
So I think we'll call it there for this session, having done all 12 archetypes and discussed whether we should call them different things. And I think that is a good place to end this episode. And we will see you soon for another one.
If you are ready to take your writing to the next level and work with a group of highly motivated, dedicated writers who are all working to not only improve their writing, but improve your writing, plus you get to work with me on a weekly basis, then I'll encourage you to check out writersroom.us. This is a website that I have created that I really wish I had 30 years ago. It's everything a writer needs to become a better writer. Not only do we do weekly critique sessions, both from other members as well as me, we have daily writing sessions, I do monthly classes, Q&As, we have activities, I do all sorts of learning exercises, such as I do a quarterly writing prompt contest, and just tons and tons and tons of things. So if you're ready to get serious about your writing and you want to actually finish that novel and have a chance of it being published, then I encourage you to head on over to the Writer's Room and join me there. And as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Inner Dragon, I'll go one step more. If you would like to get 50% off for 3 months, reach out to me. There's a million ways you can do that. You can do it through starvingwriterstudio.com, drakeu.com, any of my social medias such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever. Reach out to me, say that you would like to check out the Writer's Room for 50% off, and I will send you a link that will allow you to do just that. So hopefully you're ready to start getting serious about writing, and I'll see you in the Writer's Room.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Marie Mullaney, your co-host on this literary adventure. Our goal is to provide you with valuable insights and discussions on writing. If you believe in our mission, please like and subscribe our podcast. Sharing our episodes with your community not only helps us grow, but also contributes to a richer, more diverse conversation about storytelling. We appreciate your support. For a deeper understanding of the topics we've discussed, head over to Just in Time Worlds on YouTube. It is a treasure trove where fantasy meets history and science. Every Tuesday, you'll find new videos that delve into the intricacies of world building, drawing from our rich real-world history. Whether you're a writer, a role player, or just a fantasy enthusiast, Just in Time Worlds offers unique insights that will enrich your perspective. Check it out and join the journey of crafting incredible worlds.